6, starting at verse 33. And I'd be very, very surprised if not every single one in this room knows this passage of Scripture. It says, "But the multitude saw them departing, and many knew him and ran there on foot from all the cities. They arrived before them and came together to him. And Jesus, when he came out, saw a great multitude and was moved with compassion for them, because they were like sheep not having a shepherd. So he began to teach them many things. When the day was now far spent, his disciples came to him and said, 'This is a deserted place, and already the hour is late. Send them away, that they may go into the surrounding country and villages and buy themselves bread, for they have nothing to eat.' But he answered and said to them, 'You give them something to eat.' And they said to him, 'Shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give them something to eat?' But he said to them, 'How many loaves do you have? Go and see.' And they found out, and they said, 5, and 2 fish. Then he commanded them to make them all sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in ranks, in hundreds and in 50s. And he had taken the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and he looked up to heaven, blessed and broke the loaves, and he gave them to his disciples to set before them. And the 2 fish he divided among them all. So they all ate and were filled. And they took up 12 baskets full of fragments and of the fish. Now those who had eaten the loaves were about 5,000 men." I want to share with you a true story. And it's about a man who runs a jewelry store. And a very young girl walks into his store one day, probably not even 5 years old. And in this jewelry store are all these cases of beautiful, very expensive jewelry. And this young girl walks in all by herself. And the young man says, "Are you here to buy a present for your mother?" And the young girl says, "I do not have a mother, and I do not have a father. I'm here to buy a gift for my sister, because all she does is look after me." And she was looking through all the expensive jewelry, and then she saw one bracelet that she absolutely loved, and it was $3,000. And this young girl pulls out of her pocket her little purse and unzips it and dumps all these coins on the man's counter. Everything that she's ever had, she dumped in front of him. And the man that owns the store counts up all the coins. The coins weren't even worth $5. And the man looks at the young girl and says, "The bracelet is yours, go home." A couple days later, in walks a young woman, the sister of that young girl, and she says to the man, "I'm so sorry. My sister came in here and took something that she had not paid for." And the owner of the jewelry store looks at the sister and says, "Your young sister came in here, and she was different than any other customer I've ever had. Every customer I have comes in here and they could buy anything they want in this store. But your young sister came in here with nothing but love. That bracelet is paid in full. Go and enjoy." It's not how much we give, it's how we give it. And we read in the scriptures about the fact that there were many, many people that were very, very hungry. And I don't know about you, but when I read over that passage, I like to look at all the different gospels, because you get a true sense of all the different things that are happening. And when you read in John's account, it speaks about a lad. I'm not sure how old a lad is, but I'm going to say it's a young man. But do you honestly believe in a group of 5,000 people, one person had food? Just one? I find that very, very hard to believe. The Lord asked the disciples to go and see what people had. What have you got? And only one young man had the courage to share what he had. It's just amazing to me to think that that young man was probably saving that bread and those fish for something. He had had a long journey, and he had a long journey still to go. But the Lord asked him, "What have you got?" And he was willing to give, and no one else was. And because of that one young man giving those 5 loaves and 2 fish, everyone went away satisfied, and there were extra. We are very, very blessed in this community with the people that we have here. And I just want to encourage each one of us here tonight that it has no bearing on how much we give. It's how we give. And if we involve God in our giving, there is no limit as to what can happen.
Okay, the next agenda item is nomination for the board.
The next agenda item is the exhibition. But before we do that, I'd just like to start in prayer to thank all of you for coming here and also for this exhibition itself. And then Joel and Adrian and Jaden and Jacob will come up here. Let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for the words that you give us in the book of Mark. We thank you, Lord, for the way that you work in our hearts and our lives, and that we can show those different talents and gifts in different ways. We thank you that you brought us here together tonight after learning dialogues. We pray, Lord, that you may bless this time as we consider the things that are before us on this agenda. And we celebrate, especially at this time, O Lord, the work of the team that went to do some photography. And when we say some photography, we're amazed at, again, at your creation and how you created the heavens and the earth and how you gave them to each other as they explored a certain part of that creation and show us some things about that. We pray that you may bless us in this meeting, encourage us, and direct us in your paths. In your Son's name, amen.
Good evening. I'm Joel, if you don't know, and this is Jaden, Adrian, and Jacob. And we did some work together this summer, and the four of us are, I suppose, primarily responsible for some of the images that you see here, and we had a lot of help as well. So before I tell you a little bit about the exhibit, and then before these guys talk, I just wanted to say thanks to a few people, for people that made the trip out here, especially for this, but also to Westerhoff for the lights, to my aunt Christine, to William Groot and the school for all the support, to Kevin Godber for helping me out, and of course to Jacob, Adrian, and Jaden. And without Jaden, a lot of this stuff wouldn't have happened, so thanks to all those people. So what's the exhibit? Sorry, I have my phone. In part, it's part of my final project for my master's in photography, which I'm trying to complete. And it's called Time and the Maker, as you may have seen. The time is a key part of the exhibition, partly because some of the photos were taken in a forest with the oldest trees in the world, and then some of the other photos in a place where people say it's the oldest desert in the world. And of course, with night photography, time comes in as an important element because the starlight that you're looking at left the stars a long time ago. It's kind of like looking into the past, I guess. Time also comes into play through the diptychs at the back, the sets of images that we have there. Each set of images demonstrates how a place changes over time from day or evening to night. And each night image itself back there demonstrates a different way to use time to make a photograph. So, pardon me. The idea behind the diptychs is to explore how our perception of reality can be shaped through the lens. We can see through the progression of the images how light and exposure time transforms the landscape and the picture itself. But there's something more significant that takes place during all of that at night while we capture the images, and I think that's how we ourselves are transformed. This project is largely about collaboration, just as a bunch of the projects over here. You can see the table on the end there is a project I did. It's Jaden started with me, collaborating with some people in the city who live on the streets. And then the next two tables were collaborations between Jaden and I in Namibia and Africa, and in some slot canyons in the southwest. And of course, the rest of the exhibit is a collaboration between the four of us. And you can see Jacob and Adrian's work over there on the tables, as well as, of course, their images. So we each have two images at the back there. Another thing I should mention is the big panoramic shot behind Mr. Vriend at the back. Oh, he moved. He's stealth. That is panorama of the Milky Way. I think it's a few hundred images we put together. 195, I'm sorry. We had more, but didn't all work out. It's about 26 hours of exposure time, and we spent a few nights putting that together. And Yeah, it was a lot of work, but I wanted to say something about it. It's called The Hopeful Abyss, and I've seen a few films based on like exploring space, and one of the famous ones that you might have seen is called Contact with Jodie Foster. It's a bit of an oldie. I found it extremely depressing because really it seemed like there's just searching and searching, but there's just nothing out there, is kind of how I felt for the most part. And we had such a different experience when we finally managed to stitch all the images together to make that panorama, which could print many feet wider. And we just put it on the computer screen and started to zoom in, and we just started giggling as we kept zooming in because of the resolution. And we were finding galaxies we'd never seen before and all kinds of stars. And it was not a depressing experience, but it was more, I think it was a hopeful experience. It was like we're not looking into an abyss where there's nothing and nobody, but every time we zoom in further, we're getting a little bit better sense of who our Creator is, and a little bit kind of understanding God a little bit more. So that's why we called it The Hopeful Abyss. I think collaboration really helps us find out more about ourselves, others, and God. And while I've always found that doing photography alone is a very enriching experience because I can have conversations with God out loud in the field, and I don't have to look like I'm one of those people driving that gets caught singing out loud. There's really nobody out there. But there's something about working together that's important and that is unique. And I think it's really transformational, talking about your doubts, your questions, who God is, and just marveling at what's out there, and then giving each other feedback and encouraging one another. And really, photography has very little to do with the camera itself. When you think about the types of photographs that impact people the most, other than in advertising perhaps, that we're aware of, it's probably photojournalism. And photojournalists do a great job of having the camera essentially vaporize in their hands and just disappear. And oftentimes I think the best photos are the ones taken where the subject, if it's a person, and the photographer are kind of just connecting, and the camera's not really an element in the equation, and then the subject is really who they are. And I think that's pretty unique. And in the same way, I see the camera disappearing from the equation once we know how to use it. When we work collaboratively, it becomes more about the relationships we build together and the relationship that grows between us and our Creator. And in this way, I think photography is a wonderful tool, and if we use it well and we work together, we can intentionally spend time with our Maker and eventually become more like Him. I really believe in working collaboratively and spending time with students in the field and doing things like going on photography trips together with each other. It has great potential for spiritual growth. Of course, it's good to learn how to take pictures as well, and that's a great part of the experience. But I think it's actually about much more than that. And through photography, I've come to appreciate God so much more, and eventually become amazed by how the God of everything that I see and who created all of it was the same one that sacrificed his son for me, and that's a pretty incredible experience. And so I think the same potential is there for students and others, not just to grow an appreciation of the world, but also to better understand the one who transforms our lives. So Jacob, Adrian, and Jaden are going to share a little bit of their thoughts of some of the stuff we did together, the trips. They'll show a couple photos. And if you don't hear enough from them, or you want to see more and you haven't read, there's a couple paragraphs from Jacob and Adrian over at their table over there. And I did forget to ask us to move forward with this, so if we can just go to the next slide. Okay, that's Adrian and I. We can keep going. This is set up. If I didn't have Jaden, I would have had a lot more problems. I forgot pieces of my kit, and he had to figure out how to jimmy rig stuff together. So we put my ball head upside down to put a panoramic head on with that was robotic. You can go to the next slide. We were happy about that. Next one. This is us mounting it on an equatorial mount, which all of the 70-year-old Germans that we were working with in Africa had never seen before, and they thought it was interesting. And then I think there's another one here. Oh, that's them at dinner, which was awesome. and it's a whole nother story. And then the last one is just one of the pictures we managed to get with that. So here's, I'll pass on to Adrian.
So yeah, the trip was a pretty fun time. Like, we had lots of freedom, which is obviously nice when you're a teenager because that's all you want. But yeah, we were like free to choose like where we want to go, where we want to shoot. Like Shard would be like, "Are you guys sure you want to go here? Like, it's up to you guys." Like, it was like really like listening to what we wanted to do. But yeah, it was like really cool to just go out and be able to see like places that like you only think you'd see in movies, and just spend time in creation like that, and like go from extreme heat to extreme cold. It was interesting, but you know, it was worth it because we got some nice photos. So can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so this is one I took. So this is right after Jaden tried to climb up like this really steep dune and like was gonna like pass out because it was hard work, and I just captured Jacob taking advantage of that moment. Next slide. Yeah, so this one I didn't know existed until after the trip because I think I left my phone in like the front of the car, and then Jaden took it and took this selfie. And I think this is the only photo that has all four of us in it. Yeah, this is in California, by the way. Yeah, so this was after the dunes. I think we were on our way to Patriarch. So yeah, it was over 7,000 feet above sea level, and I just thought it was a good opportunity to make a pose and get a photo. Oh yeah, so this one I took on my iPhone. So we were making our way to Patriarch, which is like up high, and like we were trying to find a way there, but like this road was all covered in snow, so we couldn't get there. That was our first try. We'd make like 30 3-point turns to turn around because that road was like really narrow. We had like a big, like, I think it's like an SUV or like a truck. But we eventually found like another way after like a couple hours of driving on very bumpy roads. I definitely was nauseous after that. So this is when we got there. We finally found our way there. This is, I think it's like 13,000 feet. This is our setup. Sharda's cooking some hot dogs. And Jake, you can see Jacob, yeah, better not. He's always filming. He was always filming the entire trip. Jaden's setting up his gear. Yeah, that's even better detail. You can see the pot there with the dogs inside. Yeah, next photo. Yeah, so that's where me and Jacob slept. It was not comfortable at all. Very cold. I did not bring enough cold weather gear. Me and Jacob were in very close quarters. But yeah, I mean, we were thinking about doing a second night, and I was like, I don't know if I can handle that again. I mean, like, the photos were nice, but I don't know if my back can take it. But yeah, next photo. And yeah, so I think this is the last photo I took that night. So that's actually the moon. I think this was at like 3 a.m. I was pretty done at that point. I didn't have any gloves. My footwear was not sufficient, to say the least. But yeah, like I was like, Jake, can we get out of here? Like, please. So I just got up and I took this photo, and I looked back and it was pretty cool. But yeah. I didn't take this one, but this is another nice photo that Jacob took. This is just the three of us in Alabama Hills around, I think, cooking up more food. Yeah, just chatting it up.
Alright, so this is one of my photos. This is from the sand dunes, so the first location we went to. So Sharda told me to walk across the top of it, which is kind of precarious, trying to not slide down the side that Jaden had to struggle up earlier. So this is me looking back at the three of them set up on the top of the dunes. And yeah, so we were there right around sunset, so this is looking towards the sun, a nice silhouette of Jaden and Sharda. Yeah, so this is the road. You saw Adrian earlier on posing by the sign, so this is him with a power squat taking a picture of me. If you go back, kind of behind where the direction's Adrian facing, back, that's where we came. That's in the direction of the sand dunes, and if you can see the mountains behind him, that is the direction of Patriarch Grove, where we went next. Yep. Yeah, so this is another picture from Patriarch Grove. This is a quick picture I snapped with my iPhone. You can see Jaden there on the right setting up his camera, and my camera is there on the left. This is setting up for the shot that that you can see at the back there with the tree and the Milky Way. And yeah, it was very cold. You can see the snow, something that I did not expect, seeing like going from the day before in the sand dunes and like sweating, and then going to like the snow and like freezing. Yeah. Yeah, and this is one of the shots that I got in the snow there. So we went earlier in the evening, and we had an app on the phone that showed us kind of where the Milky Way would be at what point in time. And so I framed up the shot there with the tripod, got everything set up how I wanted it, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll wait till it gets dark and the Milky Way will be like right there where I want it. So that it started getting dark at like 10-ish, and when I took a picture, and the Milky Way was like all the way to the left, like behind the tree, and it was not the picture that I wanted. And I was like, okay, I'll come back in like 5 minutes, and hopefully it'll be in the right spot. And it moved like it basically hadn't moved at all. And then so I thought, okay, I'll wait like another 5 minutes, and yeah, that went on for quite a bit. And then fast forward to like 2 or 3 a.m. Where we had been waiting out in the cold, in the snow, for quite a few hours, and Adrian wanted to go back to the tent, but I told him to hold on. We'd been out here for enough at this point, so I just wanted to get the shot. So I eventually got the shot, and I was quite happy with it. And yeah, this is one of the last places we went to. This is the Alabama Hills, so it's kind of like desert, kind of lots of shrubs, but also massive rock formations, and just something about like the collaboration between the four of us here. Jaden and Shard are much more experienced photographers than I am, so they noticed things that I definitely wouldn't have noticed if I were just here by myself. So something, we were just driving around earlier looking for a campsite, looking for places to shoot at night, and they just pointed out like the light, because it was like just around sunset, and I think the light looks really beautiful here, and that's just something that I wouldn't have noticed by myself, but because I'm spending time with people who are more experienced, who can share their insight with me, it's just something that's pretty cool. And if you just go to the next shot, this is it's kind of the same location around there in the Alabama Hills, but this is at night, and this is actually kind of a fake image. So you see the ground with the rocks there is actually one picture, and then that's facing north, I believe. And you see the Milky Way isn't actually there. That's from another picture that I took facing like south or whatever direction the Milky Way is in, and I stitched those together for a nice silhouette shot with the Milky Way. And yeah.
So this summer we had the opportunity to travel and photograph a plethora of beautiful landscapes from as far east on the globe as the bristlecone forest in California. And next slide. To all the way to Kiripatib in Namibia. The views range from some of the oldest trees in the world to some of the largest sand dunes. While in topography and biome these places are quite different, what became clear was the distinct underlying connection between all of it. Oh, you can go back. Go back. Go back one more. Perfect. The presence of God. When venturing into landscape photography a few years ago, I didn't have a clear goal. Getting a sick pic and not falling off the cliff was about as close as I came. This last journey, I strived for something more thought out, something deeper. Naively, I came to a conclusion. I was going to photograph the glory of God, as if somehow I could fit the creator of this enormous universe into a 2x3 frame. Unsurprisingly, it was early on in the trip that I found this goal to be slightly less than obtainable. Joel and I had hiked deep into slot canyons in the middle of the Arizona desert, and as the walls closed in around us and light began to spill downwards, we were presented with the most beautiful display of light we'd ever seen. Next slide. Instantly, I had this wave of realization that this was only a sliver of his beauty, and thus my goal changed. From an impossible task to something slightly more manageable. I was going to capture those slivers. During the middle of the trip, a friend of mine sent me the well-known verse, Jeremiah 29:14. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you. For me, this trip became the literal manifestation of that verse, not just an internal seeking of God, but the external joy in seeking his presence in nature. This interpretation continues to shape my thoughts around God's work in our lives. He presented me with a beautiful metaphor when photographing the dunes in the Namibian desert. Having rushed to be some of the first people into the national park, we arrived early. As the sun's glow just kissed the horizon, I set up my camera while Joel ran off, leaving me alone. As I waited for the sun to crest, I was really disappointed. The light seemed flat, and it felt as if nothing could come of the scene. Very quickly, that changed. Next slide. As the sun finally crested, it began lighting up the left side of the dune. It painted a beautiful picture of, again, a literal manifestation of his power. The light pouring in was able to transform the seemingly dead and worthless scene. His same light is able to touch our lives in the exact same way. I'd love to share one last image with you. Next slide. This was also taken in Namibia, but about 6 hours north of a location called Spitskop. While I slept in, Joel had gone scouting, looking for possible shots. He came across the most stunning white tree tucked away at the top of a small mountain. Thank you, Joel. I jumped on his bandwagon, and that night we set off to capture the image. In anticipation, we set up the cameras and waited for the Milky Way to rotate into the right position. We sat discussing the feeling we were both having. It felt as if the Lord was sitting down with us, delighting in the fruits of our seeking. We mused at the idea of him laughing joyfully with us and saying, "You've only seen a sliver." Thank you again to all the people Joel mentioned before. It's been wonderful to share all our work with you. Next, we are going to be seeing a video that Jacob put together, and please enjoy.
Well, thank you so much, Joel and photography team, for that fascinating presentation. Yet another great testimony of the incredible things that God is doing here at TD Christian. Our first order of business this evening is to review and approve the minutes of the 2019 Spring Membership Meeting, which was held in April 25th. For reference, the minutes are located on the second and third page of your information package. And To that end, I would like to put forward the following motion: to approve the minutes of the April 25th, 2019 spring membership meeting as distributed. Would someone please move this motion? Thank you, Rod. And will someone please second the motion? Thank you, Ed. Is there any discussion on any of the items in those minutes? All right. What we'll do now is put that to a vote. So all members who are in favor of this motion, please raise your green flag. And all members opposed, same. All right. Looks like the motion is carried. Thank you. I will now turn the podium over to Ed. Ed serves as our treasurer of the board, and Ed will lead us through the next 3 items, which are items number 4 to 6 on the agenda. He will call for the vote of a board member nominee, share a financial update, and present the final budget for the 2019-2020 school year.
Okay, let's try this again. Sorry guys for jumping ahead wherever you are, up there somewhere. I'm sure your presentation will be the highlight of the evening, so I apologize for trying to jump ahead of it. Now, the next agenda item is the nomination for the board, and we're very fortunate that Steve Martin has agreed to let his name stand for a second term on our board. I can tell you that having served with Steve for the last couple of years, he's a very engaged, very dedicated, very prepared board member, and we're lucky that he's willing to do a second term. I believe you would have all received the bio sheet. Yes, there it is on the board. So if you're a member, you will have received a ballot when you signed in. So if you could fill out your ballots now. Eric Brower, Shun Hung Lee, and Michelle Zomer will collect your ballots once they're done. So. Everybody's ballot's been picked up. Okay, if you can go to the next slide, please. You can even go to the next one. So you would have received in your package as well the financial statements for the 2018-19 year. First of all, I'd like to thank Anne and Meg once again for the outstanding job that they do managing our finances. If you ever worked in accounting, you know how stressful year ends can be when you're trying to get the numbers together, answer all the auditor's questions, and get ready for the new year. So thank you very much for all the work that you guys do. Anne's also done a great job in the package explaining the financial statements for 2018-19. But I just have a couple points just to highlight. First of all, I'd like to start these presentations with a positive note, and on a positive note, we ended the year with a surplus of about $24,000, which is earlier in the year we didn't think that might be the case, but fortunately things came together towards the end of the year, driven mostly by increased revenues. Although our student count was down a little bit, we budget for, there's automatic bursaries for people who have families who have children in elementary Christian schools and who are long-term supporters, and we estimated more automatic bursaries than we actually got for the year. We also were able to use or keep some of the general donations. Typically, general donations we use for special projects around the school. We didn't need all those funds for the year, so that helped create the surplus as well. Some of the expenses were higher than we expected. Transportation, it seems like every time I'm up here, I'm talking about transportation costs going up. We got some fuel surcharges towards the end of the year, but we still were able to come up with a surplus. So, does anybody have any questions on 2018-19 year? Can we go to the next slide then, please? Oh, okay, we'll go to this slide. So, I would like to make a motion to approve the 2018-19 financial statements as presented. Can I get somebody to second that motion? Budney? Are there any questions? Well, then I'll ask you to, if you're in favor of this motion, to raise your green sheets, please. Okay, anybody opposed to the motion, raise the same green sheet. Okay, thank you. The motion is carried. And then we have a second motion. Each year we approve the auditor for the following year. So I'd like to make the motion to approve Andrew Weaning to conduct the financial review for 2019-20 financial year. Can I get somebody to second that motion? Peggy? Any questions on that? Okay, so then I'd ask everybody who's in favor of that motion to raise your green sheet of paper. Thank you. All opposed, same sheet. Okay, that motion is also carried. Can we go to the next slide? So just a couple points on the current year, 2019-20. So we present a budget in the spring based on forecasts, lots of estimates in terms of head count, family count, etc. So when we get to this meeting, we try to true up some of those estimates and give a forecast for where we think this year will end. And if we look at it, the big driver for our financial statements is family count. We budgeted in the spring 325 domestic families and 48 international families, and we've been blessed that we've had good enrollment for the year. We actually have more than we budgeted, 329 and a half domestic families and 48 international. So that's positive in terms of revenue. Don't ask me who the half a family is. Can I get the next point, please? And because we have a higher family count, we have a little extra expenses in terms of staffing. Transportation, again, is going up, and a little bit in business costs. Next point. So I'd like to end these presentations on a positive note as well, and we're forecasting a small surplus for this year as well. So coming into the year, we're very positive about where we're at. Another positive, I guess, we'll talk about Project 2020 a little later, but we didn't have to borrow any of the money that we approved for them to pay for the project until about the middle of October. So we had used some prepaid tuition to pay some of the expenses, saves us on interest costs, and keeps the debt down. Can I just get the last point? So one of the things, and I'm stealing a little bit from Liz's presentation on chapters, we're looking at the chapter set up within TD. One of the bylaws in our chapter in our constitution is that representatives of the chapters really make up a finance committee. And I think it's important that we have an external finance committee made up of people who are not part of the board or not part of the staff, just for transparency when it comes to financial information. But as you'll hear later, the chapters in terms of enrollment is declining significantly. And one of the things we'd like you to consider, and it's in the discussion on the questions on the table for later, we'd like to remove that bylaw that requires the finance committee to be made up of members of the chapter, so that we can create a finance committee just from members at large. So I'll put that out to you. You guys can consider that. If you have questions or comments, you can write them on the sheets, but we just kind of want to lay that before you to see if there's any issues when it comes to doing something like that. Okay, any other questions on finances? Okay, then I'm going to turn it over to Liz to talk about the chapters. So I started it off for you.
Thank you. My name is Liz, and I am a parent here as well as a board member. Melanie was to join me tonight, but her international student, who has been delayed over the last couple weeks, finally arrived today. So she's picked him up from the airport, is making sure that he feels at home this evening. So Ed touched on chapters, and for those of you that may or may not, chapters know or do not know that chapters are community-based groups that are authorized by our bylaws. Chapters have been a part of the TDCH tradition for many, many, many years, and they have made a significant contribution to TD, basically with different financial types of initiatives through fundraising, through euchre tournaments, through cheese sales. However, things are changing here, and if we can just change the slide, our TD body now, our student body consists of about 145 churches, and chapters have traditionally been kind of formed within the Christian Reformed Church. So they are no longer adequately representing kind of our families that are coming here, and we really want to create a more inclusive environment that allows all of the families to participate in kind of a more local level. So if we can change the slide again. So what does a TDCH Community Hub look like? We will keep the families organized by geographical location. And again, we want to just broaden so that we can include families from different churches. And they will be led by host families, which will allow for kind of a deeper connection on a more local level, particularly for families who are new to TDCH. And what we're hoping is that eventually too it will develop further volunteer opportunities and maybe more local initiatives as well. So it's really, we appreciate the work so much of our chapters, but we really just want to be able to broaden this kind of initiative here. So what we're going to do, if you can change the next slide, on your tables we have a discussion sheet. So we're going to take 10 minutes, and at your tables, if you can kind of use the sheet to kind of guide your discussions. We'd love for you to get your input and your insights as we further develop this concept. So we're going to give you 10 minutes on the clock. And please have a scribe, maybe assign somebody a scribe, go around the table and provide some of your thoughts on this. Thanks.
Okay, everyone, time is up. Thank you in advance for your input. If you could just leave your forms just on the table, and we'll come by afterwards and collect them. I have the results of the voting, and I'm pleased to announce that Steve has been acclaimed for the board for another term. So congratulations, Steve. And I'd like to make a motion to destroy the ballots. Can somebody second that motion, please? Thank you. All in favor of destroying the ballots, please raise your green sheets. Opposed, same green sheets. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The objective was to get up here by 8:30, and I think we made it. At least looks like it. Yeah, we did. 2 minutes to go. That means I will not talk those extra 2 minutes, but which is hard. It's so exciting to see people here again tonight. I can't remember the last time I was at a meeting where I had such a great backdrop. It's just amazing, and then to celebrate staff members today as well, and to celebrate education and learning. And I think one of the things that I'm really thankful for is the package that goes out, because it tells you all the different kinds of things that are happening in the school. It's fun to come here to celebrate a lot of those as well. There are struggles, and as we have learning dialogues, we meet with students and with parents and guardians and homestays. And we know that some of you are really working hard with your children. I know it's a struggle, and we'll continue to work with you on that. We have to remember that what we're here for is learning for service in light of God's Word, and I just want to encourage us to continue to do that. I have been upheld in prayer in the last week, and to know that if we do that for each of us, that will indeed be an incredible blessing. But how do we help our students do really, really well in different areas? And one of the critiques that people have had is, well, what are you doing in engineering? What are you doing in mathematics? What are you doing in science? And we're going to try to really show that to people in the next little while, because we had the grade 7 and 8 teachers come here and said, you do such great things in the arts and in drama and in music, and we're going to hear a musical presentation after. But what about those other things? And I said, well, it's really hard to show some of the science and mathematics that happens. I can tell you the math here is awesome, but it's hard to see that. And I think if we would put up a really cool calculus solution here, there'd be a very small percentage of people that would really appreciate that. And I think that's a bit disappointing. But as a former math and computer science teacher, what always frustrated me was how everybody would come to a party and say, oh, I hate math. Math's no good. And science, but in science not as much. And English, it was like nobody would ever say, oh, I'm really bad at English, I can't read. Stuff like that. But we're gonna try tonight to show you some of the neat things that we're doing in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which is what STEM stands for. And talking about technology and that kind of stuff, hello, those of you who are watching live stream tonight. We are live streaming this tonight, so if ever in the future you're not able to come, you can see what's going on here. So it is cool that I think we have 14 or 15 viewers. Don't know if they're students or other people, but it's kind of cool, right? And I think that's a way that we can keep connecting over the miles. I'd like to introduce Mr. Joel Dykeshorn. He and Mr. Godber take care of the STEM program. He's going to tell us a little bit about STEM in 10.
Less than 10 probably. This Mr. Godber said you can do it because you're the new guy, so I'll speak on behalf of the STEM department. So if you flip to the next slide, next one even. This quote I pulled off of a website, and it was put out by Dell Technologies, and you might have heard this before, and I think they're a little bit biased as a tech company, but even if those numbers are slightly inflated, they suggest that 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 haven't even been invented yet. So as a school, what do you do with that? We could just give up and say whatever, I guess they'll have to figure it out. Or we can come up with many programs like in all of our subjects. How can we think ahead of the game? How can we further along the skills that our students will need for jobs potentially that aren't even invented? So a lot of what we do in STEM is that kind of training. So if you keep going forward, there are three. When someone asks me what do you do in STEM, and I talked to Mr. Godber about this, and he gives great answers as well. But he said really there's three questions we're trying to answer, and we use the design process a lot in our class to solve them. And these questions are this: what is a problem in the world that I can identify? We live in a broken world, so it's actually not that hard to find problems, which is both exciting but also terrifying. But what are some problems that we can find that we can solve? Number two is, what is a solution that I or we speaking of collaboration, what is a solution that we can design that could be built to solve the problem? And then after we build our first try or our prototype to use STEM language, is there an even better solution after testing my product? So I teach the grade 10 STEM class. We run a grade 9 STEM class and a grade 11/12 levels of STEM. And we're currently looking at how we can further along that program. But in grade 10, I'll speak to, we started off our year with a balloon car race, and then also a really neat project that the students were really excited about. And they designed their own boat made out of cardboard. So you head to the next picture there. There are 2 students who did well, and then about 22 students who needed to take their prototype that they tested and revisit to create a better solution. We talked a lot about materials that you would choose, the math behind figuring out if your boat's going to go underwater if you stick 2 students in it, learned about Archimedes and his naked run out of the bathtub. And we also learned that if you do the proper math and the proper science and the proper build, you can actually float around. They were in that boat for over 20 minutes out of a boat made out of cardboard. The rest made it that long. One's in and one's wet already. But anyways, that was really neat. We did that out by the creek. You can keep going. Just some more examples of student work. It's really neat watching them engage in the design process, but also then the building process. So it's a lot of fun there. On the far side, you see our TA, and he's helping students. But what's really cool, and as teachers or as people tour, they would comment, wow, they're all engaged. It's really not that hard to get student engagement. So there's 3 examples. We'll continue on. Outside, there's some more student work that you can see, but these are 2 examples that students created, and the task or the problem that they had was, how can I make my phone amplify or become louder without any electricity? So that was a big problem in their lives, so they designed these and built them out of wood. And the decibel, I'll speak in layman's terms, often went up 10, and Mr. Robinson will be able to explain that better, but let's just say from 31 decibels to 41 decibels. So quite a jump. Again, you can talk to one of our fantastic physics teachers to see how crazy that is, but you'll just have to take my word that it's pretty nuts that they could design and see and test on a decibel reader and really be like, oh, I did it. Or, man, I really did not do that well. If I had another chance, I would change this, 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 and this. So they talk through that. So you can keep going. This is a really cool project that 4 students worked on, and they made a scale model version on AutoCAD of Project 2020. And the 4 of them, Mr. Groot said, that'd be a cool idea. I said, I agree. They thought it was really cool. About a month into working on it, they were less enthused of the idea. And they took the building plans right off Maple's website and deciphered the scale and the fact that they work in lots of millimeters and how they could make that work and how the thicknesses of the plywood could actually get to scale. So it's quite incredible. They also realized the frustrations of changes in construction and realized that by the time they were done, there were already 2 other revisions of the drawing, so they're very frustrated that their completed project is not actually what the completed project will look like, as Rod and many of us can attest to in reality. So that was really neat. So there are some proud owners, and that is that project. So we move on to the ending, the future of STEM. Mentioned earlier that we were looking for some new courses, and this is the fun part of designing a program, because we're looking at how can we get more and more students engaged in the shop and in the STEM space. So we're talking about things like a home renovation course where students can go through all sorts of different trades. We look at getting new tools like vinyl cutters or sewing machines and new technology. We want to continue to enhance the STEM space, and why? So that more students are engaged and empowered for service in light of God's Word, which we could use some help. So it wouldn't be a good meeting if we didn't say how you could help us help our students. So currently in our shop we have a beautiful table saw that has been there for many years, and it's a great industrial table saw. However, it is not perfectly safe for if a student is going to use it on their own. So we are going to invest in a SawStop professional saw. And if you should look these up on YouTube. They're quite something. They use hot dogs to test, but basically as soon as it senses skin, a break hits the blade and the blade just blows up basically. And it's quite something. They've shown fingers that have hit it and there's just a tiny little nick on the finger. I wouldn't test it per se because it's expensive to buy new blades and brakes, but it is, you can imagine there's 24 students right now in shop. It is something as a shop teacher that you are concerned with, of course, for student safety. So that is one thing that we'd really love to fix or improve so that they could work on that and learn that skill on their own. And storage is always an issue in shops and in our STEM space. We would really love a very specific 52-inch Husky 15 drawer tool chest, textured black specifically. You say, what do you need? So we said, this is what we'd love. So those are two really tangible, specific ways that you could help us. If you are interested in supporting us in this way or in some sort, please do talk to me or Mr. Godber. Mr. Godber, could you wave if you're in here? Oh, he's over there. Beautiful. So that's Mr. Godber. And sorry, that's my class's work. You should see the stuff that grade 9s are doing. I'm sure you do. So ask your grade 9 friends. And what's really cool about the space is that there's more and more teachers from different disciplines entering and joining and collaborating with our STEM students and STEM teachers, and to create just awesome projects for their other classes, like Noah's Ark, for example, or different laser printing that we're doing around the school. So if you haven't checked out the space, we'd love to show you around sometime. And other than that, just thank you for your continued support as we move forward in STEM here at TD.
He was less than 10 minutes, but does anybody have a specific question for here, Mr. Godber? All right, thank you very, very much again. This is a great time as you look at the thing. We have a music presentation, and it's really exciting to have one of the students who was here in grade 9 return now in grade 12, and we're going to invite Naomi Boot to come up here and sing for us. And she sings wonderfully, and it's, I think, an appropriate time to also, highlight some of the arts again. Let's welcome her.
Hello. Good evening. Today I'm going to be singing an Italian aria from the 1750s, and this is called Se ben crudele, and it means thou not deserving.
Sempre vedere
Thank you, Naomi. It almost makes me want Charlotte's Web to be a musical. Naomi will be in the play that plays on November 28, 29, and 30. And we're really excited it's also going to visit John Knox Christian School in Brampton and Holland Christian Homes, where it will play to a number of old folks and young folks, as kindergarten students from Halton Hills and Timothy Christian School will also be there. And it's really neat to see volunteers put this stuff together. It's a set that can travel, and the students will be doing that as well. So that's an exciting thing that we're looking forward to. November 28, 29, 30 here. And, you know, if you want to go to Holland Christian Homes, I guess you can figure out what day that is there too. Rod and I are going to talk a little bit about Project 2020 and the Fire Hall Thrift store. Kind of give you an update as that kind of stuff. So let's just take a look here at what the project looked like 15 months ago. One more click. There you go. That's what it looked like at the end of what we would call phase 1. We understand phase 1 and phase 2 is really confusing for people. So that's just what it looked like 15 months ago from the sky. And we're going to see a little bit more of what it looks like as we move forward. Next slide, please. Sometimes people are new to the community and they're saying, so what does Project 2020 all involve? And this is a list of things that it does involve. And if you see the models out there in the hallway, you get some sense of those different kinds of pieces. So you'll see the presentation center, the foyer, which we've now decided, according to the architect, will be called the lobby. So, because they keep calling it the atrium's over there, the lobby will be in the front. So I'll have to change that slide eventually. And then what I'm most excited about is the Learning Commons. And you'll see some pictures of that, but that's basically a space that is 3 classrooms large where students can come and learn and work with resource support or with other support, or just to work quietly on some of their own courses and so on. Additional washrooms, large classroom for flipped classroom instruction, and I think we're going to call it Infinity. Room number Infinity, because it's going to be a math room, and that was an idea that came forward. And I thought, you know what, we can use an Infinity. It's, you know, teach some kids about Infinity to start off with. And with the things we've already completed, improved parking lot, the enlarged main office, and as Mr. Dykstra spoke about, the enhanced shop space, which is now known as the STEM space. So lots of exciting things, and we'll continue to work at those things as we move forward. Next slide, please. All right, so here's just a little overview of some of the things we started on April 23 this year with the groundbreaking for that part of the school. You'll see some of the groundwork that was done at the front. Next one, please. See some stuff in June as we developed the basement, built that, put that in June. Then in July, you can see some of the walls starting to come up. Oh, sorry, August. I guess I skipped to July. Maybe I got it backwards. I don't know. But you'll see some of the walls going, which is really fun. That is actually the corner of Infinity. And then the next one, September. That's the Learning Commons area. So you can see on the far right, that is the space aside of where we are. You can see the bottom hallways of those things from 2 different places. So the transformation in September of that space. And then October, this is just kind of a fun shot where you can see the presentation space looking there. And it is one of those pictures that's not quite right? Because it's a panorama. The walls are not leaning. But that's just one of those cool pictures in October. And then this morning, we took another shot. And that's what it looked like this morning. Really, you should have been here early. Anyways, do not open until 2020. That's when we're hoping to open. It'll open in the spring of next year. And now we're going to have Rod bring you through some of the things that he's been doing from his perspective. I'd like to just recognize, first of all, the amount of work that he's been doing on this here. I know he's a passion for it, but the amount of dedication and work that he does is really good. And I can tell you from my experience that I do not have the experience he does in the construction industry. And today at the meeting I said, I'm just going to go back and run the school. I don't need to be here anymore. And Rod's got it. So let's just give Rod a hand for his work. Yeah. And now we'll roll to the next slide.
Okay, we'll see what money I've been spending for you. It's been great fun. Up on the wall you see an incomplete story because we're too far into this thing to stop. You'll see what the money we spent over the last 3 more or less years. So far at the end of, what was this, September?
These are the monies from this morning. We're right up to date.
So that's what we have committed to and paid. There is a fair amount to do yet, but you'll see that as we go. The lobby and whatnot, it looks like our completion, substantial completion date is going to be the end of February, probably the first week of March. Next month we might find it out to be the middle of March, but we've had some fairly significant challenges with construction, like walls that fell apart when they tried to lift them up due to excessive grip on the floor, on the ground, on the wall, on the floor, those kind of things. But we are well on the way to having the quality that we assured you that you would get with this project. That's what we are focusing on. What was it? 3 things. You can have speed, price, or time, and we're working in quality. Sorry. And we are working on quality. We lost the time. We're not here. I swore that we'd be in this place by the end of October, and that was not true. But
what was that famous quote you said that was?
Irrational exuberance.
Yes, irrational exuberance.
Ben Bernanke. So under the chart, you'll see a few things that we've noted so that you have an understanding of where things are. Special projects are for unspecified donations go to things that we need to fill in the educational part of the project to make it work properly. We had the city of Vaughan and their building department have a penchant for safety, and they got a hold of our plans in a final review and added another $135,000 to our costs for very good things called security monitoring, a dust collector that needed to have fire suppression, and some fire doors that we have to put into this building. We're a school, so they look at us extra fine, I guess. Right. We are now into winter, which we had hoped to avoid, so we'll have some extra seasonal heating. It's kind of hard to put a roof on a building when it's covered with snow, and that's going to be fun. We hope to be starting that in a couple weeks. And the theory is, before Christmas, we'll be completely tied up, and everything will be inside. So more or less, that is where our project is at the moment. Any further question? Anybody would like to ask any questions about it, or any questions you may have? You're right. We can't stop. We'll tell you more when we finish the project next spring.
One of the things that we wanted to clarify, and I was going to do it and I forgot to do that, the special projects line is a really a little bit tricky one. It says it's a line from which is used for unspecified donations, or sometimes they're designated donations. So what we've done in this project is when somebody gives a donation to the school and they don't designate it, we put it in special projects to see the different places that we can do the work. And that's why a number of the things that we have done have come out of donations that have not been specifically for 2020, but have been able to allow us to do stuff like make the office a year early. They allowed us to build the STEM space, which was part of the project, but do it earlier so that everything didn't happen at the same time. So those funds were actually funds that were donated to the school, not specified for 2020, but will allow us, as you see in the next slide, to see that they were actually considered then to be donations towards the school. And we did a lot of work on that today to give you that information. Are there any more questions about this slide? Oh, we're at that one already. There you go. They revealed it already. So thank you, Rod. So Leanne, Leanne, let's stand up so people know who you are. Yeah. This is Leanne. She's our campaign fundraising manager who was hired in July. And she has done a lot of work putting a lot of the guts behind or underneath what we're doing in the program. And one of the ideas was a triometer. And that's our triometer, which is coming next week. It's a date palm, as you can see here. It'll arrive here. And she's put a lot of effort into figuring out the people who needed to do their pledges, to connect with other people, do a lot of the work underneath or at the basis of the campaign. I'm really thankful for that. So you can see why we're doing the triometer. And now you can see that with all the work that we've done looking at how the special projects and stuff worked and so on, we're almost at $3 million in donations toward this project, which is really, really exciting. I did say tonight, I said to Leanne, I said, you know what? Maybe we should ask if somebody wants to bring us over $3 million tonight. But I will just leave that to somebody else to think through. I'm just really excited about that. We've been saying over the last little while, 2.4, 2.5. We did all the work with respect to that, all the things that we committed to 2020, and where we're at with it, we're almost at $3 million, which is really exciting because that was the cost of our last project. All right, how can you help? And this is something that I'd like to just piggyback off of what Rodney said. I am so impressed by people who give from their hearts, and I have had an incredible opportunity to talk to over 200 people who have given to the project. And one of the things that Leanne did, and I know this has resonated with a number of people, has said, if we want to raise the rest of the money to get to 6 million, how do we do that? So we need, as we started this basically in September with that one little change. Underneath you can see there, we needed 160 people to give at least $1,000, and then we needed 64 to give 5,000, and so on across. And you can see we're starting to make some of those numbers go down. And that's just a really exciting thing. And if somebody decides they want to give 3 1,000s, well, then that makes the 152 into a 149. And we encourage you just to think about that. No pressure. It's just, this is a way for you to understand how we're working at this and how she's working at it. And I think it's a real concrete way of doing that. So you can see as a result of the work that we did today, we adjusted to reflect the extra giving. So we took out a $250,000 gift, 2 100,000s, 1 10 and 4 ones, because at that point we're at 2.4, now we're at 2.974, which is an exciting thing. Are there any questions about the campaign? If there are, you can ask now, or else you can see Leanne after, which is why I asked her to stand up. I just really appreciate her work, and I think we should give her a hand right now too. So let's give her a hand. Yeah. This school is about people working together, and that's the thing that excites me the most about it. It is a community. And one of the things we said at the beginning of this whole project was unity, right? Unity in what? Unity in Christ. We're trying to continue to provide for Christian education, Christian learning, as people before us did, and as God calls us to continue to do. And that's in learning and also in creating a space that we have. All right, let's move to the next slide, please. All right, this here is an update from Paul Haffenden. It's about 7 minutes long. It's about what's happening at 325. And the neat thing is we're calling it the Fire Hall Experiential Learning Center. That's its official name, just like Toronto District Christian High School Society is the name. We're known as TD Christian, and the space across there will be known as the Fire Hall Thrift Store. But the official name, because it's a learning place, is the Fire Hall Experiential Center, Learning Center. And Paul Haffenden, who could not be here tonight, has recorded a 7-minute video to tell you what you can do and what's happening with that space.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Paul Haffenden, and I'm volunteering to do the task of completing and getting operational the thrift store. The building adjacent, the fire hall, will house a thrift store, and we are on target for opening in early February. Our goal is to open with a soft opening, followed by some sort of gala event by about the middle of February. So a big part of the thrift store is actually tied to the school and what we are calling an experiential education center. In this store, students from both TDCH as well as other educational institutes will be able to visit and gain some practical experience, retail experience, perhaps marketing, accounting, and general work experience. Being a fire hall, we have a main grand hall that has approximately 4,000 square feet of high ceiling, bright area. We're going to incorporate a large retail area. This will include clothing, furniture, and a number of household goods. We have the opposite side of the building, what was more of the fire hall maintenance and a bedding area. We're setting up the training and educational area. So students will be able to work there, work on projects, work on the retail aspects of things and various projects, and have lessons. So this will be, again, set up as a training center. We also will have an area of what we call the boutique, more high value items, something of interest to sort of the more finicky buyer. We hope to also, in the retail operation, engage people in the community, make the center a place where people can drop in and feel comfortable. People in the community can drop in and browse and relax and maybe have it a bit of a destination. Those walking from condos and apartments to people on local streets. As we are in the preparation stage, there are a number of pieces of equipment and items that we can use. We're going to have to either go out and buy or scrounge. So the list that you will see is just an example of some of those things that will be very beneficial, and we hope to be able to get donations to reduce the costs. That includes anything from a refrigerator for a staff lounge to pallet racking. We're looking for a small cube van that will be used for delivery and pickup. You may not have one that's to be donated, but you may have one at a company that could donate some time to assist us with deliveries prior to us needing to purchase one directly ourselves. We are fortunate to be able to be working with the Encore thrift store in Brampton. It is a good model, providing us a lot of assistance and direction, both recommending software programs to allowing us to go and actually train volunteers to how to run stores, what sells and what doesn't sell. You may not be aware that a thrift store, key thing to a thrift store, is that you have regular short-term turnaround. While your inventory is zero or low cost, it's important to turn that product around quickly. We're not trying to fill the store and keep it full. We're trying to fill the store and keep it turning over. So we will need you to find things and participate in sorting things that we can keep the store fresh, turning over. Everything from seasonal clothing, sporting goods, household items, furniture, to unique items. So the store will be run by volunteers, and our mission statement is to serve the community. Well, most of the earnings or net profit will be contributing to the TDCH. There, we have a mandate of a minimum of 10% will be donated to other charitable organizations within the community. Serving the community is our motto. Now, in terms of volunteers, this store gives a lot of opportunity to serve, and serve doing something that either motivates you or that you're good at. For example, we need to set up a testing area where someone will be responsible for actually inspecting any goods to ensure that they work, electrical are fine, and function. We're not going to sell anything that is not operational. We need people to help with the physical setup of the store. That will be installing racking, shelving, clothing displays. I'm looking for at least one volunteer to help me and a group of people work on the actual retail layout. Visiting stores, look at various retail furniture and shelving, and work on the retail outlet. And then there's the ongoing task that will be delivery and pickup. We will thrive on being able to provide a reasonable service in the community of picking up some of the goods and the large items. So we will need crews to be able to drive in the community on scheduled times, pick up items, bring them back to the store, and unload them and have them ready for sale. The last ask that I have is for funding for the operation. We will be coming out with a prospectus asking for people interested to loan the organization up to $10,000. This will be considered an interest-bearing secured loan against the operation. Our funding expected is between $70,000 and $80,000, and we hope to get 7 to 8 individuals willing to participate, provide that loan, and start up funding. We also expect it to be a 2 to 3 year complete payback with interest. So if you're interested to continue the conversation of interest in this project, to volunteer or find out what we're looking for donations, please visit this website. Connect with me, connect your friends with me, and start to accumulate those items that we can make this store a successful project for the school and the community. Thank you.
It's wonderful to see how Paul has gotten so excited about this project. We originally hired him, and he's now volunteering his time for a former parent of the school and somebody who knows a lot about this stuff. And we're really, really excited as a board and a community to have them here. This brings me to the most favorite part of the night for me. I know I love a lot of things about it, but to celebrate the people who have been here, we have 4 different people we're going to recognize. We're going to have some people speak to them. And I'm really excited about that because it's 90 years of experience that we're going to actually celebrate tonight. So I'd like to tell you how this is going to work. We're going to have a picture come up, and then a teacher or a colleague will come up and speak about that person. And then the board member, Peggy Raspa, and I will congratulate that person, give them a check and some flowers, and then we're going to wish them on their way. It's really exciting to see many of you to celebrate the people who are here tonight. And the first person we're going to celebrate is Tim Buwalden. Just before Tammy comes up, she's going to come on out, it's fine. Tim is the guy who puts stuff together like the video we just saw. He makes people look good and sound good. And I really, really appreciate the work he did with Paul, and I really appreciate the work that he does here. And not only that, he's got a wonderful sense of humor, but I'll let Tammy take it from here.
Excellent. Tim's wondering whether he needs to stand up here, but come on into the light, Tim. Come on into the light. What can one say about Tim? Surprisingly, he is in charge, well, not surprisingly, but he is in charge of our communications, but he's often a man of few words. If you want insight into the mental musings of Tim, you need to sit beside him in a meeting such as this or a staff meeting where he gives a running commentary, often witty and honest, about the proceedings. Typically, when you ask people about Tim, their first response is, he is hilarious. Well, actually, when I asked several people, Rachel, Colin, his wife, the response was, nothing you can say in front of a crowd. So we're just going to stick with Tim is hilarious, but he is much, much more than that. Mark described him as a juggler. He is able to take all kinds of tasks and keep them up in the air, and things are coming at him from many different directions, and he's able to satisfy the unique needs of each individual who needs communication, either through PowerPoint or video or print materials, and so he takes care of all of those things. Tim is also a storyteller. When he does devotions, it's really enjoyable to hear what he has to share. Colin can attest to this as he drives to and from work with Tim on a very regular basis. High school was kind of where, at least I think it all kind of started. Tim is the guy who makes sure that we get all our yearbook pictures in. But surprisingly, he was missing from his own yearbook newspaper team photo. So we're not entirely sure if his media work started there, but because there is no proof. But there is a lot of proof all around us here at our school. You walk the halls, you see his work, you see the photography, you see the things that he has put into place. Tim has created many things to share the stories about TD Christian. Phil Hosmore, which you probably don't know, that's okay, he's a really cool guy, was Tim's friend in high school, probably still your friend, I don't know, maybe. But he really talked about Tim's entrepreneurial skills. Tim started a business in high school. It was called Cram It, which isn't as bad as it sounds. It's actually just his name and his partner, Tim and Mark, backwards. But this was 25 years ago. Cram It started, where Tim was providing students even at that time with the things that they needed. But it was actually bootlegged Coca-Cola back in those days. Entrepreneurs think differently. They act differently. And this is Tim. Tim would be a perfect recipient of okay, $1 million, and inheritance from a long-lost relative somewhere. He would make the responsible decisions, take care of his mortgage, take care of his children and his family. But then he would start developing new ideas, new businesses, new innovations, and have a whole lot of fun with it, I think. He would no doubt run through many ideas, a lot of money, but it would be fun. And Kramit Industries would be revived and put themselves on the map. Tim is also a trendsetter. Many years ago, he was the one who introduced me to The Office, the UK version. So even before it came to Scranton, Pennsylvania, Tim was already a fan of The Office. But Tim is also willing to buck the trend. So he is our communications, he's not the director. I could give you a coordinator, I could give you a promotion if you want. But he also does, he's in charge of our communications, but he doesn't even walk around with his own cell phone. He needs to share one. Before you think that this is really noble and he's trying to avoid social media and the influence of it, it's actually just so that we can't get a hold of him whenever we want to. In the case of Tim, in case you think that Tim is all about movies and media, this is not always true. Carter, his son, assures me that Tim is actually mean because Tim makes him have no screen nights. And so he's not too happy about those nights. So Tim, again, is making choices in his life to remove the influence of media, which I think is noble. Carter will also admit, though, that his dad is super fun, and he is a jokester. In education, we often talk about project-based learning, and Tim was challenging his students to plan, create, and then also perform their work for an audience long before it was considered good pedagogy. He developed a communications department that gives the student a voice. We live in a society where much of our time is being entertained by others, but Tim has challenged the students to create culture rather than just consume it or to condemn it. We've all enjoyed The Pulse, and if you haven't, you should go to our YouTube channel. But this is Tim's brainchild, and it's safe to say that there's hundreds of students who have taken the risk and put themselves in front of and behind a camera because of Tim. Not only in creating The Pulse, but also in creating other creations that have been viewed publicly. Very few students that are involved in The Pulse would say they love being the center of attention, that they love being in front of a camera. But Tim is able to put them in a safe place where they can take that risk. From the words of the students, Mr. Bawalda is a teacher who is always willing and available to help if needed, but still allows you to work things out on your own when he believes you can. He challenges us and does not allow us to submit subpar work. Other words students use to describe Mr. Bawalda is creative, resourceful, fun, supportive, and caring. Tim uses a lot of technology here at TD Christian, but most of his true art is found in his doodles. So if you want to hear what he has to say, sit beside him, but he also is a doodler. And his daughter Ava, she loves that about Tim. So when I asked her how she would describe her dad, she said, "I love when he does art and draws with me. Daddy is a hard worker, and he is a good daddy." There's so much to say about Tim, but my time is up. I think his friend Phil captured it best with this statement: "I find the joy of Tim is quite honestly being with Tim." I hope many of you get to have that experience of just being with Tim. And I'm kind of envious of Colin with all the rides that he gets to take and back and forth to work. Tim, congratulations on 10 years here at TD Christian. It has been my honor to work with you. You entertain me, you challenge me, you support me, you make meetings bearable, and you provide me with the professional learning community. You create safe spaces for our students. You help them create award-winning work. You ensure that the story of TD Christian, our past, our present, and our future, is shared beyond these walls. I feel like we should raise a glass. It kind of feels like that sort of environment, but instead I will provide you with your own mini celebration in the form of a Dr. Pepper.
Our next person is Brian Smith, and come on up, Brian. And Rod Dendring's going to speak about him. One of the things that I really appreciate about Brian is I say, so Brian, how are you doing? He says, I'm well. Isn't that great? And it's not I'm good, I'm well. So how are you doing tonight, Brian? I am well. There you go.
Brian was afraid that I would be speaking about him this evening. All day he's been poking his head in my office saying, what's going on? Right? Yes. I will not be as long as Tammy. Tammy has to teach kids all day long in a room and has much more verbiage that she could put out. So Brian likes things short and sweet, and I will keep it that way. Brian has been a staff member for 10 years, which is kind of amazing, longer than I. He is a big part of my building maintenance staff. Some of the people that work here at the school have said that I could write a book about my work with Brian and Lori. I will keep that for a retirement evening if I'm still around. Some of that stuff can't be said here or anywhere, so. Right. When I met Brian, he was quiet, diligent, hardworking, and still is for that matter. It has been great working with Brian. He works hard at all kinds of stuff, needs all the stuff that needs to be done, cleaning the building with 400 and something students and plus 45 staff and all the stuff they leave in this place by the end of each day. And we have the joy of, it's no small task, and we have the joy of returning it to a presentable space by the next morning, and most of the time we get that done. Brian and Lori are the team, and I'm the player coach. I mostly coach and they mostly play, as it were. This idyllic situation has changed somewhat over time. Brian has his procedures down pat. I mean, he does it this way, and I offer changes to that routine, and by giving my suggestions by different ways that things might be done. And I always knew when he wasn't sure my opinion was worth much, because he'd answer with, I guess you could do it that way, or maybe so, and depending on the inflection of his tone, which is friendly and to the point, I can always tell that he thought I was off my rocker. Sometimes I was, sometimes I wasn't. Often he continued to do the task just as he planned to do it in the first place, which is fine. That's the way it's done. I'm just a coach, right? Together, Brian and Lori clean this place up after the events that go on here, and we have more and more events as time goes on, very cool events, and makes it a great place. One of our returns, part of our routine is to run a parent cleanup day, or PCDs as Brian says. I have slowly prodded Brian and Lori to take these procedures over, and they try to run, or I have them run the days themselves, and I generally just assist if possible, and they do quite well. It's no longer that I no longer have to prod him to ask for a parent cleanup day. Brian seems to focus on this. Often the Monday morning after the last PCD day, he arrives in my office asking when we're going to schedule the next one. And the reason is, for two reasons. One, he gets parents into the school to clean his school, their school, and also I think he quite enjoys the community on a Saturday morning. You do in a way, that's for sure. Brian has changed quite a bit since when I started here. It's because he's more comfortable, I think, in this place, and it's a safe environment for him, almost too safe in some ways. Though it is a pleasure to work with him, sometimes I have to wonder about that. Usually I greet Brian in the morning with, "How you doing, Brian?" or "Mr. Schmidt," and he usually responds with, "Mr. Rodinsky, how you?" Right? When he comes to my office, he's often asking, "Miss," or "Hello, Miss, would you like to do this?" So I just Yeah, what do you say? I'm not sure that he does this to the rest of the staff here. He seems to enjoy getting my goat or razzing me and teasing me, but you know, it's okay. One day he came to my room and looked at me kind of, fairly firm, and he said, I've got a new job and I start tomorrow. And that was Saturday, and I thought, well, and then he turned and left my office, and I thought, oh, okay, well, that's something new. I guess I'll have to start thinking about how to replace this big guy. And a minute later, he walked back in laughing and chuckling and claiming that he was just doing it to tease me. So that's what I get with working with Brian. He picked up a part-time job on weekends working in a greenhouse, so he did have a new job, and the rest is history. He got tired of that, and he came back and worked for me full-time. I suggest that Brian not do that too often, because that wouldn't be too good, and he just laughed at that too. He shares with his fellow staff members his recipes, his joy of reading, the pictures of his nieces and nephews. We have a privilege of having Brian here. He enjoys, I think, working with us. He drives in every morning from all the way in the deep hills of Newmarket, I think, without fail. Hill or whatever the weather's giving us, he's on his way unless I call him and tell him to stay home. His pleasant personality and consistent efforts are a pleasure for us to have here at TDCH. Thank you, Brian.
One of the fun things I have to do is to introduce Rachel, but also to let you know this little thing about Judy that I find wonderful. The day that Judy started here, and she's heard this many times, is the day my son was born. So I'll never forget when she came, and I'm still glad you're here. And Rachel's going to now feed you, but thank you so much. Are you going to come up or are you going to sit down? It's up to you. Yep. She's been here for 30 years. She can choose. Okay, there you go.
Awesome. I have the challenge and privilege of attempting to recognize Judy Van Scheppen's 30 years of service to the TD community. I have been both a student of hers and a colleague. I'll start with stories that show characteristics I saw as a student, and then we'll highlight how these steadfast characteristics have continued. There's more to Judy than her deep laugh, her enjoyment in watching her children play sports, her intense dislike for Edmonton, her ability to kill a mouse with the heel of her boot, her consistent and powerful love of skies, her desire to listen, her hatred for heat. Have you ever been to her classroom? Her love of decorating, shoes, plants, control, and all things black, her ability to be full of self-proclaimed hilarity, and her deep passion for dissections. As a grade 9 science student in Mrs. Van Scheppen's class, I was quite simply petrified of her. I liked her, I wanted her to be my teacher, but I know that I wanted to stay on her good side. She controlled the class with a healthy balance of fun and order, but it was clear, don't mess with her teaching. Mrs. Van Scheppen takes responsibility in education seriously. She was a dedicated educator. I can recall Judy being involved in multiple things. She and Evelyn Dundrink ran track and field day for the entire school. They were pickleball intramural queens. They ran that old phys ed office with joy and ease. Judy taught a lot of phys ed, mostly the all-boys classes, and a lot of science. If there was a competition, Judy was there. Students loved her, and at that time, we fondly referred to her as Sheppy. We remember Judy being consistently present. As a coach, Judy was all in. When gearing up for playoffs, our team was unable to use the TD gym, so she made arrangements to practice at John Knox in Brampton. She was so committed to our team, even as a part-time teacher, that she showed up with her 2 toddlers, Hannah and Luke, in tow. They played while we practiced, and Judy incredibly balanced both roles. She loved her family and her team of athletes. Even with 2 little ones at home, she never missed a practice, game, or left a tournament early. She was all in.
In OAC, our class went on a 5-day Algonquin canoeing and portaging excursion led by Mrs. Van Scheppen and Mr. Vanderkloot. When some guys in my class were too, fill in the blanks as you please, to carry equipment on a lengthy portage, Judy stepped in to carry the load, literally. She made the long trip twice, including one with a barrel of food on her front and a pack on her back. Now, I love the lady, but she isn't overly tall. Take the angle of a blue plastic barrel and uneven terrain, and you're bound to get a story. 2 of my classmates and I ensured we stayed with Sheppy. We were walking a bit ahead when we heard her trip, but she got right back up. Then it happened again, but it was abundantly clear, because of sounds and some words, that this fall was more challenging. With a leg gushing of blood, she got right back up, keeping her barrel and pack, and kept on trekking. She was resilient. My peers and I remember that Mrs. Van Scheppen was loved. In fact, a classmate talked about her when I was in grade 8. This girl's older sister loved Mrs. Van Scheppen, and quite frankly, this girl told us that next year we had to love her too. Many of us entered TD with a bias, but we'll all tell you that that paid off. When Judy's daughter Hannah was born, students threw her a baby shower. Students cried when she went on mat leave, okay, at least my cousin did, and celebrated when she returned. She was loved. Not much has changed since the beginning of her career. In fact, it feels trite to summarize the next 20 years by saying, yep, she continued to do that, but she did. Judy was and is a dedicated educator. She is committed to her students. She still scares many of them, but that's because she has unwavering standards. She holds it's just true. She holds education in high regard. Knowledge matters to her. Good work habits are necessary. Don't make excuses. Ask questions. Ponder. Put time into your studies, because she is putting time into her teaching. To quote a former student, she taught with a calm and sure manner that brought the respect of every student. She was that teacher who genuinely wanted you to grasp concepts, and if you weren't, she'd explain it again until you understood. And she brought a mix of seriousness and playfulness to the classroom. Judy is still a dedicated educator. Judy was and is present. This presence has been consistent, but has evolved beautifully. Where she used to spend more of her time in the gym and coaching, she now spends different time in the guidance department as she works with, comes alongside, and coaches students in a variety of ways. Students know her, but in a changed capacity. She is still present. Judy was and is all in. She was a successful coach in the 1990s, and her ability to be all in has led to a wide variety and great number of championships as a girls volleyball coach. Although she has snapshots of legacy all throughout this place, a specific piece of legacy hangs in the gym. There's a girls volleyball banner with 10 championship titles that are a result of her coaching. Teams don't win if their coaches aren't committed. Judy is still all in. Life is rarely a breeze, but Judy was and is resilient. Work life, home life, and balancing the two is never easy with a family, especially one as involved as hers. This resilient commitment to both school and home is admirable and has influenced both students here and her children. Her daughter is a happily married midwife, one son a professional lacrosse player, another is on an American lacrosse scholarship, and her third son is crushing academics and sports here at TD. She has supported both home and school. She is still resilient. She was and is loved. This hasn't changed over the years. Students loved Sheppy, and now they love VShep. Judy and I had the privilege of working alongside each other in International Block, where she was a great support to me and the students. She even visited us in the Dominican. This, my friends, is not an average commitment. While most of you probably think that hanging out in the Dominican for a week sounds glorious, in many ways, this was a deep level of punishment for Judy. She hates the heat. It is hot there. But she loved the students enough to endure the heat for a week each year for 6 years. She was beyond loved in this role. An iBlock alumna writes, "She is a mom of the school. She was always someone I could talk to about more than school. She genuinely seemed to care about my life. She was always accepting. Whoever you were, whatever you did, she let you be you without judgment. Another states she felt like a safe place and a home all in one. In all her classes, I knew I would succeed because with a gentle hand we were guided along. I always felt truly loved when around Mrs. Van Scheppen. She is still loved. Folks, this evening let's celebrate the 30-year career of Judy Van Scheppen. As she is a dedicated educator, she is present, she is all in, she is resilient, and she is loved.
And now we'll have Mark come up to talk about Evelyn. I can tell you that when I came to here to TD, I really respected her, and I still do, and her journey is just an amazing one. And at some level, she doesn't want to be recognized, but we are absolutely going to recognize her tonight. And I'm going to ask Evelyn if she wants to come up to stand beside Mark, who's going to talk about her.
That's right. Whatever side you want to be on. Okay, I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm going to try to read slowly. Standing in front of a crowd and trying to capture Evelyn's gifts, her personality, and what she means to this school is a little overwhelming. How am I supposed to do that? 40 years of teaching is significant and monumental, and I've only been here just over half the years Evelyn has. So I thought I'd do it this way. Simplify the first 20 years via a short Cole's Note version poem, and then add my personal notes about the next 20. Here goes, Evelyn, Part 1. It was 1979, and Miss Hiringa made her teaching debut at TD. She taught science, typing, and, of course, PE. But was she a teacher or a student? It was really hard to tell. She was so young, fit as a fiddle, and a real bombshell. But she soon settled in, married a guy named Rod, continued to educate, lead, guide, and share her faith in God. She became mom to 3 precious girls along the way, instructed new courses, joined guidance, and showed students the value of fair play. The years rolled by, she matured with wisdom and grace, and she continues to bless us with her work in this place. Evelyn, Part 2. Can you put the first slide up? That's Evelyn in 1979, and that is Evelyn last year in Belize. Can you put the next one up? Same thing, that's Evelyn when she started on staff. She had a perm, but yeah, that's the only difference that you can see there, and that's Evelyn last year as well. So this is Evelyn when she began teaching 4 years ago. Sorry, I just said that, I'm repeating myself. Not much change, is there? And I'm not just talking about the anti-aging thing she's got going on. I'm talking about the constant that is Evelyn. Steady, stable, dependable. Evelyn can always be counted on for a lyrical, "Good morning and how are you?" welcome, accompanied with a big smile when she greets us on her morning rounds. Evelyn believes in and lives a healthy body, healthy mind lifestyle. She eats well, exercises regularly, tennis is a great love of hers, is a coach for various sports, and sets an example for others. Evelyn is fashionable. Her outfits are always stylish and classy, and she's got the best shoes. Evelyn loves spending time with her family and friends. Evelyn is a really great host. Evelyn began coming on the March break Belize trip 5 years ago, and her presence there has been incredible for me. She works just as hard as the students on construction sites, helps organize and reorganize the daily schedules that can change so quickly in Central America, makes real connections with the locals, and just knows how to have fun. Doing this trip together has bonded us, and I just want to thank you for your continued friendship. I appreciate how you include me in day trips, check in on me, take me out on your sailboat, encourage me, support me, and are honest with me. Like the time in Belize when you compared my hair to that of a goat that we saw earlier in the day. Would you please put that up? Say- Right? There's nothing more a girl likes than to hear that. Okay, but I have forgiven you. I'm over it. You're gonna keep that up, aren't you? But I think the piece that needs to be highlighted is the work Evelyn does with students. Evelyn has helped make the guidance office a safe place kids can go and one-on-one share their frustrations or anxieties, ask questions about university and college decisions, cry, share exciting news, and more. She encourages them, challenges them to reach their potential, helps navigate when needed, and loves them from whatever place they are at in their learning, maturity, or at times from the chaos they are experiencing. They pull up a chair beside her and together they work through issues. She loves them and makes time for them. She eases parents' nerves and listens when they have worries or concerns about their children. And what better gift to give someone than to just sit and listen? Evelyn is very intentional with kids. If you're walking down the hall with her, she'll stop at any given student and engage them in conversation. She believes in them, and it's evident in the way she interacts with them. I'm always amazed that when students come back, she asks them how they're doing, pinpointing the schools and programs they are at. Evelyn feels for students who are living far away from home and are dealing with homesickness, cultural differences, language barriers, and more. She works closely with our international students and began a leadership team that meets regularly. She has helped put things in place to get homework help, sports, and after-school connections, and to encourage other students to embrace different cultures via assemblies and dinners. And those are just some of the things we know and love about Evelyn. In closing, I'd like to share the 1979-1980 Bible verse from the year she began here at TD. Colossians 3 verse 14 says, "And regardless of what else you put on, wear love. It's your basic, all-purpose garment. Never be without it." Sounds like someone has lived out this verse and put it into action. Well done, good and faithful servant.
Okay, well, we're almost finished, but this is your opportunity to bring forward any miscellaneous questions or comments about something that we presented this evening or something we didn't chat about. Now is the time.
It's a great question, Mark. I don't know. I hope everybody heard that. Paul Havinen and is working with the government and with one of our lawyers to make sure that everything we're doing follows the guidelines they have put forward for us, and it will work at present. It looks like it will work as a separate entity that the school will rent the property to. One of the things the government asked us when we bought the fire hall already in 2012 is that we do something with it that works with education, which is why it's the Fire Hall Educational Learning Center. But that's a very important question and one that we're very cognizant about and working hard on. If you want more information from me than that, I can talk to you personally, but essentially, Paul is working with our lawyer to work through that stuff to make sure that everything we do is what needs to be done in order to run it effectively for the manner that we've described tonight. Does that answer your question? All right, thanks for the question. Meg just texted me. She said, if you had a crock pot here tonight, that's miscellaneous. Make sure you get it. Where's it going to be? It's going to be in there. Okay. So some people brought food for staff tonight, part of the volunteer hours. Make sure you pick your crock pot on the way out. That's miscellaneous.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Before we close, I'd like to take a brief opportunity to thank the staff and volunteers who contributed to this evening. There's a tremendous amount of preparation work that happens behind the scenes, and I would like to thank those who helped out, specifically Mark and Meg and Anne for preparing and distributing the information packages, Lynn for faithfully recording the events of the meeting, the many staff who contributed to the reports and the updates and presentations, and of course William for your unwavering support of the board. And thank you again for attending tonight and for your ongoing support and contribution to TD Christian. Your participation is a huge encouragement time has slipped away, so let us close in prayer. Heavenly Father, as we come before you, we thank you for your goodness, for your faithfulness, and for your unfailing love to us. We thank you that we've been able to gather together this evening to reflect on and to celebrate the incredible work that you've been doing here at TD Christian. We thank you for TD Christian and for the vision that you've given us to be a community of learners who serve you and others through Christ-centered education. We thank you for how you have blessed this school for so many years. Bless us with amazing leadership, with dedicated staff, with faithful supporters, and with the evidence of lives being changed to more closely follow you. And as we continue to progress on this exciting Project 2020, we ask for your continued blessing. Grant us your favor in completing this project with excellence, that our light may burn even brighter in this community, and that our impact for you may be increased. Let us never lose sight of you or fail to give you the glory in all things. And now as we part from here, please grant us safe travels to our homes, for we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. The meeting